of gobbledygook that is going to either eliminate or prevent half the people that it would have benefited from getting involved in the first place. So it's sort of like there's a bigger problem here, and it's this tax code is
it's a book
ridiculous.
of favors, but it's a book of favors, right?
Well, I don't know. I am a firm believer in the Internal Revenue Code, even though it is expanded exponentially.
As has your business because of it, I'm sure.
That's very true. So I do have a dog in the fight. However, the biggest problem is a lot of the laws and guidelines are seemingly contradictory, and they all have to work together. And that's really one of the issues about when you say, okay, we're going to allow for this opportunity. The actual compliance for regular individuals or business owners may be wildly different than what has been described to the public, and that's a real issue.
Right, because to Chris's point, by the time they write it all up, the only guy that can take this 100% write-off will be, you know, some guy who makes wallets down in Chinatown and has one leg. By the time you get through all the exceptions, it's not going to... And this is the law of unintended consequences over and over again with this administration. We keep seeing this, right? So we're using the tax code to make it more voluminous, as a book of favors, as a big PR something to say, I'm giving you a tax break, look, I'm making it all better. But that's not going to create jobs.
That's a fact, and I don't think we can necessarily look to short-term solutions to solve long-term problems. I love the idea of decreasing taxes. I think we all pay too much taxes. And then there's a significant portion of our population that is not paying enough, and those are not the upper echelon earners. Quite the opposite are the people who are engaging in commerce and just not paying a thing, receiving refundable credits that they probably are not even entitled to. I take an issue with that. Additionally, I also take an issue with the poor spending of our elected officials. I think there really should be some accountability here because it's not a bottomless well.
What do you think about that tax, just in general, as in principle?
I'm opposed to it. I'm vigorously opposed to it. I don't think it's conducive to business, and we need business in the United States, and any additional burden to that is detrimental.
But you do tax returns, right? You know that when you depreciate something over the course of 4 years or 5 years or 3 years even, it's just sort of like a little gift you get every year to offset whatever you know, any kind of income you made. So we're presuming that all of a sudden next year is going to be a great year and we're not going to need these, depreciation write-offs. But you are. Who's kidding who?
I agree.
So all we're doing is we're hurting them more.
We're kicking the can down the road. Again, this is another way of kicking the can down the road.
I would just like to say one thing. I don't want to mislead any of your audience here.
Please.
We actually do defense and representation. We don't prepare tax returns.
Okay, that's fair.
That's all right.
fair. But you know your way around a tax return.
Certainly.
Okay, so you know what we're saying then.
Absolutely.
All right, now what about a flat tax? I just want to get your feelings on tax in general, because there are alternatives to, like we said, the tax code that's like that thick, that has loopholes and everything else all in. And a flat tax would, to your point, tax everybody.
Maybe so. It smacks of a simple solution to a complex problem.
Okay.
Is the flat tax, how is that going to be applied to corporations and businesses? Are they going to stay in the remaining system? How will that work for flow-through corporations? And how much are you going to be taxed flatly? I've heard a lot of numbers bandying around. I think what we need to do, again, at the risk of being redundant, is demand our elected officials engage in more responsible spending.
But then what happens? If there's no flat tax, there's no bad tax. It might take away from some of your business. Let's throw that on the table, right? But what's left? Redoing the Internal Revenue Code? I mean, no one wants that job. Talk about kicking that can down the road. Everyone's going to put that off for the next administration, and then it just gets bigger and bigger.
That's a fact, but unfortunately, a lot of the people who are tinkering with the codes and the rules and the guidelines have never run a business or been involved in a business, and things theoretically may sound very good. But in the actual pitch and moment of conducting trade and commerce, it just doesn't work. It becomes very complicated. So as far as revising the entire IRC, I would not recommend anyone undertake that all at once, lest you experience all of these unintended consequences we're trying to avoid.
All right, David, God, for the life of me, I forgot who it was. Within the last couple of days, I've seen a report that said Hiring in the finance industry, particularly financial planners and accountants, is going to be one of the areas, in addition to healthcare, where we're really going to see a lot of jobs created. Do you see that in the next year or 2 years because of the tax code, because of people worried about taxes coming up? Do you see your industry really starting to add some professionals?
Well, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad idea that people, retain competent counsel. I personally have not seen a big spike in this, but I would certainly hope that's the case.
Because it's very confusing. Someone just wrote on the boards that someone should finally roll up their sleeves and tackle this IRS code. And I think that is the only answer right now, unless we go to a flat tax, a consumption tax, of that, whatever you want to call it. There's no other way to do it, right?
Think of how many, and I want to say billions of dollars. I don't know the exact amount. How much did corporate America spend on getting ready for Y2K? Remember all the hullabaloo about that? It was like, oh, but it's going to be the end of the world because we're going to have to change all the computer programming. Billions of dollars was spent getting ready for Y2K. Why can't we look at this in a similar light and just say we have to tackle it? This is going to be the tax world's Y2K, and just make it simpler. It would really be, but if somebody ever did that, and say the government paid your firm a lot of money to go in and do that, and then you could retire, and you didn't have to worry about the very complicated IRS code. I mean, wouldn't it hurt your industry a lot, but wouldn't it make it easier on everybody else?
Maybe, maybe not. Again, because the problem with this issue is a lot of the fruits of your labor will not bloom until the coming years. And you may find that revision was no benefit whatsoever.
I got you. You may not know until years.
Either way, the way it's being used right now is, and I keep saying it, it's a book of favors. Farmers get a tax break because somebody spoke up in the farm states, and nobody's speaking up in New York and New Jersey for us. I don't know why, so we keep getting hammered left and right, and it's not being used the way it was originally intended.
Spend a lot, that's why.
We do, but we don't need to be taxed. Come on now. You could have your little apartment in Miami if we weren't taxed so much.
I know, it would be a little one too.
David, thanks for
Good to
being
see you,
with
David.
us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, David.
David Selig, tax practitioner at Selig & Associates here in New York City.